Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to walk a bit of a tightrope. We're tackling a subject that is usually responsible for the most awkward silences at dinner parties.
Oh, I know exactly where this is going.
And honestly, probably those heated debates in church parking lots. We're talking about money.
Mm-hmm.
But not just money. We're talking about the intersection of faith, economics, and this very specific, often controversial concept of financial freedom.
It is the ultimate taboo mix. I mean, usually when you blend religion and economics, you get two very loud, very opposing camps.
Right.
You have the group that believes money is the root of all evil, that to be spiritual, you effectively have to take a vow of poverty.
And then you have the other side.
The other side that treats faith like a cosmic slot machine, you put a prayer in and a Lamborghini comes out.
Exactly. The name it and claim it crowd versus the poverty is holiness crowd. But this stack of sources we're looking at today, specifically a teaching series called Keys to Financial Freedom, is interesting because it tries to carve out a third lane.
It does. It's not trying to be an investment guide for day traders, and it's not a critique of late-stage capitalism.
No, it's a really rigorous theological deep dive into what the Bible logically claims about wealth generation.
And that word logic is so important here. The mission of this deep dive isn't to give you financial advice, but to really analyze the internal argument presented in these texts.
It's like a system.
It is. The source treats scripture almost like a legal document, a constitution with rights and responsibilities and mechanisms. It's less about feeling blessed and more about understanding a system.
And I have to say, going through these notes, there were a few moments where I actually stopped and said, wait, really?
Oh, yeah.
Specifically regarding King Solomon. We all know him as the wisest man in the Bible, right?
The classic example. Asked for wisdom, got wealth thrown in as a bonus.
Exactly. I always pictured him just, sitting on a big gold throne dispensing wisdom, and people just handed him sacks of cash because he was so smart.
That's the common image.
But this source material points out a specific detail. A detail in the chronicles of his life that just completely shattered that image for me. It turns out his wealth wasn't magic. It was logistics.
It's a detail in 2 Chronicles most people just gloss over, but it's the linchpin of the source's entire argument about how wisdom actually works.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves.
We are. We have to save the Solomon import-export business for the end.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Let's unpack this from the beginning. To really understand the argument this source is making, we have to go back to the very, very start. Genesis.
Right. The source makes a really bold claim right out of the gate regarding the nature of money itself.
It has to, right? It has to deal with that money is evil narrative.
It does. It starts by addressing that cultural baggage we mentioned. And to prove its point, the source goes straight to Genesis chapter 2.
Okay, so this is the description of the world before the fall of man, before everything went wrong.
Correct. This is the perfect state of creation. The text describes a land called Havilah, which borders the Garden of Eden, and the scripture explicitly says where gold is found.
Right.
But then God adds a little review. He says, the gold of that land is good.
That is a fascinating distinction. He doesn't just say there is gold. He qualifies it. He calls it good.
Precisely. The argument here is that material resources, gold, precious stones, things of value, were part of the original design.
They weren't an evil invention.
No, they weren't introduced by the devil. They weren't a result of sin. God put them in the earth on purpose, and he stamped them with his approval.
So if the resource itself is good, the problem isn't the gold.
It's us, exactly. The source leans heavily on that verse in 1 Timothy that everyone misquotes. It clarifies that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, not the money itself.
It's the attachment, not the object.
Right. So the first step in this whole framework is a mindset shift. You have to stop viewing wealth as an enemy of spirituality. Because, as the source argues, if you subconsciously think money is wicked, you will sabotage your own ability to generate it.
Okay, so the gold is there. It's good.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we get it? This is where the source transitions to the concept of work. And I feel like this is where the theology hits the Monday morning reality check. Because for a lot of people, work feels like a punishment.
The daily grind. The rat race.
Yeah. I have to work because Adam and Eve ate the fruit. That's the general vibe.
But the source challenges that narrative entirely. It makes a distinction between toil, which implies struggle and frustration, and the mandate to work.
What's the difference?
Timing. The source points out that the mandate to work appears in Genesis 2.15. God placed man in the garden to tend and care for it.
This is before the fall.
Exactly, before sin entered the picture. So work isn't a result of sin.
So it's not a punishment.
No, according to this text, work is a divine function. It's a feature, not a bug. Humans were designed to work in the same way fish were designed to swim.
So work is the vehicle.
It's the primary vehicle God instituted for us to access provision. The logic is, God provides the resource, like the gold in Havilah, but he provides the mandate, work, as the only legal way to access and manage it.
That totally reframes the daily grind. It suggests that your job or your business is actually a spiritual act of tending the garden.
Correct. It validates the marketplace. But here's where the source gets really interesting. It asks, is the goal just to be busy?
Right, because we all know people who work incredibly hard, 2 jobs, long hours, and are still struggling.
If work is a divine function, why doesn't it always, well, work?
Exactly.
The source argues that God doesn't just want effort, he wants profitability.
Profitability, that sounds like something a CEO would say, not a theologian.
It does, doesn't it?
Okay.
But the source cites Isaiah 48.17, and the text says, I am the Lord your God, who teaches you to profit.
Wow. Teaches you to profit.
Yeah.
That is a very specific phrase. It sounds like God is acting as a business consultant.
In this framework, he is, and it's backed up by Isaiah 65.23, which says, they will not labor in vain.
So work without results is not the goal.
Not at all. The source uses a translation that puts it bluntly, you will not work and have nothing coming out of it. The argument is that labor in vain is actually a violation of the divine design.
That is a heavy statement. It implies that being spiritual should actually correlate with being effective in the real world.
Exactly. The source asserts that God leads people by the way they should go, specifically to ensure their effort yields a return. It suggests that poverty isn't a sign of holiness, but often a sign that we're not tapping into the wisdom or strategy available to us.
Okay, so we have the resources, which are good, and we have the work, which is a divine mandate. Now, I want to get to the mechanism the source keeps mentioning. He talks about covenant of wealth. That sounds incredibly formal. What does that actually mean?
This is the legal backbone of the entire argument. A covenant, in the biblical sense, is much stronger than a contract. A contract can be broken. A covenant is binding unto death.
Okay.
The source references Hebrews chapter 6. It describes God making a promise to Abraham. And the text says, because there was no one greater to swear by, God swore by himself.
That's the ultimate collateral.
It is the highest possible surety.
Right.
And the promise was twofold. First, blessing I will bless you.
That's the quality, peace, favor, protection.
Exactly. But the second part is multiplying I will multiply you.
Which sounds like quantity, scaling up.
It is quantity, exponential growth.
Mm-hmm.
The source argues this isn't just about feeling good spiritually, it's about tangible increase.
Okay.
But the real linchpin of this argument, and if you remember one verse from this deep dive, it should be this one, is found in Deuteronomy 8.18.
I have that one highlighted here.
Yeah.
Remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth.
Power to get wealth. Now, we need to stop there because the definition of power is so crucial. The Hebrew word used here is coach.
Coach. K-O-A-C-H. Something like that.
Roughly. Yes, and the source explains that coach doesn't mean magic. It doesn't mean money falling from the ceiling when you sleep.
It's not a magic wand.
No. Coach means ability, capacity, substance, and skill.
So it's not a magic trick, it's a toolkit.
Exactly. It's the ability to create value. God gives you the capacity to succeed in the marketplace. He gives you the idea for the startup. He gives you the stamina to work the double shift. He gives you the networking skills to close the deal.
That makes so much more sense. He gives you the engine, but you still have to drive the car.
Precisely. It shifts the responsibility back to the individual to use what they've been given. But then we have to ask the question, why?
Right. Why does God care if I have wealth? Is it just so I can live in a mansion and buy a boat?
That's usually the criticism of this kind of teaching, that it just promotes greed.
Yeah.
But the source confronts that head on. Deuteronomy 8.18 finishes the sentence. He gives you power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant.
So the wealth isn't really for you. It's for the covenant.
It's functional. The source is very explicit about this. Wealth is evidence of God's faithfulness, yes, but it's primarily a tool to support the work of the ministry and to help others.
You're a conduit, not a reservoir.
That's a great way to put it. You are empowered to prosper so that you can fund the things God cares about. If you're just hoarding it, you're essentially breaking the purpose of the coach.
And this applies to us now.
Well, the source points to Galatians 3:29, saying that modern believers are heirs according to the promise. So this ancient deal with Abraham, the argument is that it applies to you today.
Okay, so we have the theology, we have the why. Now let's talk about the how. The source lists these 4 principles of activation. Basically, if this covenant exists, how do you turn the key?
These are the practical mechanisms the source details. And the first one is fascinating because it seems almost counterintuitive to a modern capitalist mindset. It's the principle of gleaning.
Gleaning, that's an agricultural term, right? Like leaving the corners of the field.
Yes. Leviticus 23:22. The law said when a farmer harvested his field, he was not allowed to harvest the corners. And if he dropped a bundle of wheat, he couldn't turn around and pick it up.
He had to leave it.
He had to leave it for the poor and the stranger.
So don't maximize efficiency to the last decimal point.
Exactly. Leave margin for the needy. And the source interprets this for today as a mandate for charity and compassion, specifically almsgiving.
So you don't keep 100%.
No. You deliberately leave a portion for the needy. And the source says this validates your faith. It cites James 2, faith without works is dead. By leaving the corners of your field, by giving to the poor, you are proving that you trust the source enough to not hoard every single penny.
That's an act of trust.
It is. It opens the door for blessing because you're acting as a steward, not just an owner.
Okay, principle number 2, and this is the big one, the one everyone fights about on the internet. Tithing.
The T word.
The source goes into a lot of detail here. Usually the argument against tithing is that's Old Testament law, it doesn't apply anymore. But this source takes a different angle.
It does. It acknowledges that objection, but counters it by saying tithing predates the law of Moses. It points to Abraham tithing to Melchizedek in Genesis 14.
Which was hundreds of years before the 10 Commandments.
Hundreds of years. So the argument is, since it started before the law, it doesn't end with the law.
Okay.
But it goes even deeper into this Melchizedek connection. The source calls tithing a business workplace covenant.
A business covenant. How so?
It links it to the order of Melchizedek. The New Testament, in Hebrews, calls Jesus the high priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek.
I see where this is going.
Right. The source argues that just as Abraham tithed to Melchizedek to honor him, believers today tithe to honor Jesus as their high priest.
It even compares it to communion.
Yes, it says tithing and communion are inseparable priestly activities. One celebrates the sacrifice, the other honors the king.
The source is very strong on this. It says you pay the tithe to honor the high priest.
So it's framed less as a tax and more as a relationship management strategy. That's a good way to put it. It's described as a way to rebuke the devourer, to prevent unexpected losses.
Okay, moving to number 3. The principle of free will offering. How is this different from the tithe?
The tithe is considered mandatory, the first 10%. The free will offering is, well, it's free will. It's voluntary, what you give above and beyond that.
And this is where the cheerful giver comes in.
Yes, 2 Corinthians 9:7, and I love this detail. The source notes the Greek word for cheerful is hilaros.
Hilaros, like hilarious.
Exactly. The source says you should be a hilarious giver.
Like laughing while you write the check.
Laughs. Essentially, yes. Giving with such joy that it's almost irrational. The idea is you are so confident in God's provision that giving away money is a delight, not a burden.
It's about sowing and reaping.
That's the principle. You can't reap a harvest if you don't plant seed. The offering is the seed for your future growth.
And finally, the 4th principle, prayer and fasting. Now, usually I think of fasting for, spiritual things like getting closer to God. But this links it directly to finance.
It does, citing Joel chapter 2. The context there is a devastation. Locusts had eaten everything. The economy was destroyed. And God's instruction was to call a fast.
And what's the result?
Restoration. The source highlights the promise, I will restore to you the years that the locust has eaten.
So it's for when you're stuck.
Yes. The argument is that some financial blockages are spiritual in nature. Maybe it's bad habits. Maybe it's what the source calls spiritual hindrances. Prayer and fasting are used to break those barriers and release provision that has been held back. It's like clearing the pipes.
Okay, we've covered the principles, but I want to circle back to what we teased at the beginning, because all of this theory is great tithing, coach, covenants, but does it work in the real world?
And this is where Solomon comes in, the ultimate case study.
Right. This is the part that really grounds the whole discussion for me. We know Solomon asked for wisdom, and God gave him riches as a bonus. But the source asks a critical question. How did those riches actually manifest?
It wasn't just a pile of gold appearing in his bedroom every morning.
No. And the source points to 2 Chronicles 1.16-17. It describes Solomon's specific business ventures. He imported horses and chariots from Egypt.
Okay, so he's an importer.
But he didn't just collect them. The text says he brought them out of Egypt and then supplied them to the kings of the Hittites and the kings of Syria.
Wait, he was a middleman.
He was a supply chain manager. He realized that Egypt had the supply and the Hittites had the demand. He situated himself in the middle and controlled the entire trade route.
That is profound. Because it implies that the miracle of Solomon's wealth wasn't